Navigating the cost of college in the U.S. Gosh, it feels like climbing a mountain sometimes, doesn't it?
It really does. A big one.
You know, way back when, Benjamin Franklin said that an investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. And that idea, that core concept, it absolutely still holds true. Education is an incredible investment.
Absolutely. Fundamentally important.
But let's just be honest. The price tag on that knowledge today, it's a whole different ballgame.
Completely different scale.
We've all seen the numbers, and they're pretty stark.
Yeah.
College costs have just ballooned, rising something like twice as fast as regular inflation since the 80s.
Yeah, that trend has been consistent. Tuition, fees, they just keep ticking upwards year after year. And family incomes haven't kept pace, not even close for most people.
Which makes it one of the, if not the biggest financial hurdles many families are going to face.
No question. And because of that massive cost, figuring out how you're actually going to save for it, it stops feeling like a simple savings goal, becomes much more of a complex financial strategy you need to map out.
Right. You can't just, stick some money into the mattress and hope it works out.
Definitely not. You need specific tools. Tools designed to help you tackle this particular challenge effectively.
Okay, so how do we approach something this big? What are the best tools in the toolbox? That's really what we want to dig into in this deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
We've gathered, a whole bunch of sources, articles, research, expert notes to really try and unpack this whole world of saving for U.S. college. And our main focus is going to be on the primary tool most people hear about, the 529 plan.
Right, that's the big one.
We want to peel back the layers on that, understand the different flavors it comes in, really get into those tax benefits everyone talks about, explore how flexible it actually is.
And then also look beyond the 529. What are the other common options people consider? Things like, regular taxable brokerage accounts, or even using a Roth IRA.
Exactly. We're not just going to read off a list of regulations here.
No, definitely not. The goal is to pull out the really important pieces of information, connect the dots for you, bring some clarity, and maybe help you see the strategic side of these different choices.
Yeah, help you figure out what might actually work best for your situation. Hopefully spark a few aha moments, maybe uncover some things you didn't expect.
That's the plan. Clarity over confusion.
All right, so let's start by just setting the stage again. Why is this so important? Beyond just getting the piece of paper, the diploma, why is higher education viewed as such a critical investment right now?
Well, the data really speaks for itself. The job market today is just fundamentally different than it was, say, 30 or 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You see these estimates as something like 85% of jobs now require some form of education or training beyond high school.
85%.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not just about needing a 4-year degree for those, highly specialized professions anymore. It's becoming increasingly necessary across a much wider range of careers in our modern economy.
And the financial impact over someone's working life.
Right.
It's not trivial, is it? The numbers we saw are pretty staggering.
They really are eye-opening. I mean, think about the potential lifetime earnings difference. Someone who gets just a 2-year associate's degree, maybe some college, they're projected to earn, on average, roughly $500,000 more over their career compared to someone with only a high school diploma.
$500,000 more just for 2 years.
Okay. And then if you look at someone who completes a bachelor's degree, that gap explodes. We're talking about potentially $1.5 million more in lifetime earnings compared to that high school graduate.
$1.5 million. Okay, that really frames it.
It does. So yes, the upfront cost is incredibly daunting, no doubt about it. But funding higher education, it really is a direct investment in future earning potential. It's a critical piece of your long-term financial picture.
Okay, that definitely underscores the stakes and the potential return. Now, let's shift to the how. And this is where, time becomes your best friend. We're talking about the power of compounding, right?
Oh, absolutely. Compounding is, it's practically magic when it comes to long-term saving.
Explain that a bit. How does it work?
Think of it like this. You start saving, even a small amount, consistently. The money your savings earn, the interest, the dividends, the growth, that money starts earning its own money.
Okay.
And over many years, that snowball effect just gets bigger and bigger. It becomes incredibly powerful.
Can you give us a practical example? Because looking at, hundreds of thousands in potential college costs, starting small might feel almost pointless.
Right. It can feel totally overwhelming, like a drop in the ocean. But consider this scenario we found. Imagine saving just $80 a month. starting right when a child is born and keeping it up until they turn 18.
$80 a month. Okay, that feels manageable. Like maybe packing lunch a few days a week instead of buying it, or skipping a few fancy coffees. Yeah. Maybe $4 a day on work days.
Exactly. $4 a day. It feels achievable, right? Something you could potentially start doing today without drastically changing your life. Okay, so if you invest that $80 consistently every month for 18 years, and let's just assume a hypothetical average annual return of 6%, which, is a reasonable historical average for long-term diversified investing, though, of course, past performance isn't a guarantee.
Right. Standard disclaimer.
But based on that hypothetical 6% return, that seemingly small $80 a month, it could grow to over $30,000 by the time your child is 18 and ready for college.
$30,000 just from $80 a month.
Over $30,000.
That's actually amazing. It really drives home the point that the biggest challenge isn't always finding a huge lump sum to start with. It's the starting part, and then just being consistent over that long time frame. Time is doing a massive amount of the work for you.
Precisely. That time value of money is huge. The less you save early on and let compounding work for you, the more you'll inevitably have to rely on other sources later, things like taking out bigger loans or pulling from current income when costs are highest, which are generally much less ideal options. And because policymakers recognize this power of starting early, they created these specific tax advantage programs designed explicitly to make saving for education easier and more effective. Which brings us back to the main one, the tool most people think of. The 529 plan.
Okay, let's dive into the 529 then. What is it, fundamentally?
Fundamentally, a 529 plan is a specific type of investment account. It gets its name from Section 529 of the Internal Revenue Code, the part of the tax law that created it.
Hence the name.
Exactly. It's sometimes also called a Qualified Tuition Program, or QTP, but its core purpose, the reason it exists in the tax code, is specifically to encourage families to save for future education costs by offering some pretty attractive tax benefits.
So it's not just like any old investment account. It's special, with rules built specifically around education saving. And we found there are actually two main flavors or structures for these 529 plans.
That's right. They're not all the same. There are two main types, and they operate quite differently: prepaid tuition plans and college savings plans.
Let's tackle the prepaid tuition plans first. What's the basic idea there?
With a prepaid plan, the concept is you're essentially buying tuition credits or maybe contract units today at today's prices.
Okay.
The promise or the goal is that these credits will cover a certain amount of tuition, say a semester or a year, at a participating college in the future, no matter how much tuition has gone up by them.
So you're trying to lock in the costs now, hedge against that future tuition inflation.
Exactly. Its performance is directly tied to how much tuition increases, not the stock market.
That sounds potentially appealing, protecting yourself from those crazy tuition hikes. But what are the catches, the limitations?
There are some significant limitations, which is probably why they've become less common. First, prepaid plans typically only cover tuition and usually mandatory fees.
Just tuition and fees. What about room and board books?
Room and board might be included in some plans or offered as a separate option, but often it's not, or it's very limited. Books and other expenses are usually not covered, and a really big limitation is where you can use them. They're often restricted to just in-state public colleges and universities. Or sometimes there's a specific network of private colleges involved, like the independent 529 plan. But your choices can be quite narrow.
So you lock in the tuition cost, but you might be seriously limiting where your child can actually use that money later on.
That's the major trade-off. Flexibility is often reduced. And there's another key risk factor to be aware of. These plans are not guaranteed by the federal government.
Not federally guaranteed. So what backs them?
Any guarantee comes from the state that sponsors the plan, and those guarantees can vary quite a bit from state to state. You really have to read the fine print and understand the specific guarantee, if any, before you commit.
Okay.
And maybe partly because of these limitations, we've seen fewer states even offering new prepaid plans anymore. I think the sources mention only about 9 states currently accept new applicants for their prepaid programs.
Okay, so prepaid plans. Hedge against tuition inflation, but potentially limited coverage, restricted use, and you need to understand the state guarantee. That leads us to the other type, college savings plans.
Right, and this is the type that's much, much more common today. When people talk about a 529, this is usually what they mean.
How do these work?
College savings plans are basically investment accounts. The money you contribute goes into various investment options offered by the plan, usually things like mutual funds or ETFs.
So like a regular brokerage account in that sense.
In the sense that it's invested in the market, yes. The value of your account will go up and down based on how those underlying investments perform.
Okay, so unlike prepaid plans, these definitely have market risk, but the upside is more flexibility.
Significantly more flexibility.
Mhm.
And that's a huge draw for most people. The money in a college savings plan can be used for a much broader range of qualified education expenses. We'll get into that list later. And crucially, they can be used at almost any eligible educational institution. We're talking virtually all accredited public and private colleges and universities in the U.S., plus many vocational schools, technical schools, trade schools, graduate programs, even many eligible institutions overseas.
Overseas too.
Yeah, as long as the school participates in the U.S. Department of Education's federal student aid programs, which many international universities do, that wide applicability is a massive advantage over most prepaid plans.
Okay, that makes sense. College savings plans. Investment-based, market fluctuations, but much wider range of expenses covered and usable almost anywhere. Since these are the main game, let's really dig in here. Where does that magic come from, the big advantage we talked about?
The real power, the magic of the 529 college savings plan, it all comes down to the tax benefits. They're specifically designed by the tax code to help your education savings grow as much as possible.
Let's break down these tax advantages. Starting at the federal level, how does it work?
Okay, federally, the contributions you make go in after you've already paid income tax on that money.
So no upfront federal tax deduction when I put money in.
Correct. It's after tax dollars going in. But here's the first bit of tax magic. Once the money is in the account, it grows tax deferred.
Tax deferred, meaning?
Meaning you don't pay any federal income taxes year after year on the earnings inside the account. The dividends, the interest, the capital gains from your investments. It all just keeps reinvesting and compounding without that annual tax drag.
Okay, so if my investments inside the 529 make money, I don't get a 1099 tax form for those earnings each year like I would in a regular brokerage account.
Exactly. That lets the growth potential really accelerate over time, untouched by taxes. And then comes the biggest federal benefit.
The withdrawal part.
The withdrawal part. When you take money out of the 529 plan, those withdrawals are completely tax-free at the federal level, as long as you use the money for qualified education expenses.
So all that growth that's been building up tax deferred over potentially 18 years, it comes out entirely free from federal income tax if I spend it on tuition, room and board, books, etc.
Correct. Both your original contributions and all the accumulated earnings come out tax-free for qualified expenses. That's a huge advantage compared to saving in a regular taxable account, where you definitely owe capital gains tax when you sell investments to pay those college bills.
Tax-deferred growth, tax-free, qualified withdrawals. That's a powerful 1-2 punch. Okay, what about state taxes? This is where it gets a bit more variable, right?
It does, and this is a really important piece for people to understand because it can vary significantly depending on where you live. Many states, I think the count is close to 40 states, plus Washington, D.C., offer their residents some kind of state income tax benefit for contributing to a 529 plan.
A state benefit on top of the federal ones. What form does that usually take?
It could be a state income tax deduction for the amount you contribute, which lowers your taxable income for state purposes. Or, in some states, it might be a state tax credit, which is often even more valuable as it directly reduces your state tax bill dollar for dollar up to a certain limit.
Wow, okay. So I might get a break on my state tax return just for putting money into the account. That's like getting an extra discount on saving.
That's a good way to think about it. It's an added incentive from the state to encourage college savings. However, and this is the critical nuance you need to catch.
Uh-oh, here comes the fine print.
Yeah, a little bit. To get your home state's tax deduction or credit, you usually must invest in your home state's specific 529 plan.
Okay. So even though I can technically invest in any state's 529 plan, maybe I like the investment options or fees in Utah's plan better if I live in, say, Virginia, and Virginia offers a state deduction. I'll probably only get that Virginia deduction if I use the Virginia 529 plan.
That's typically how it works, yes. You have the freedom to choose any state's plan, maybe because it has lower fees or specific investments you prefer. But if you choose an out-of-state plan, you'll likely forfeit your own state's tax break, assuming it offers one.
So checking out your home state's plan first is definitely a key step.
Absolutely. You need to weigh the value of that state tax benefit against the potential advantages of using another state's plan.
But wait, there's an exception here too, right? For some
Yeah.
states.
Yes. And this is a really valuable piece of information if you happen to live in one of these states. A handful of states offer what's called state tax parity.
Parity meaning equal treatment.
Exactly. If you live in a state with tax parity, you can claim your state's income tax deduction or credit even if you contribute to any state's 529 plan, not just your home states.
Oh, that's huge. Which states offer that?
According to the sources we looked at, the list includes Arizona, Arkansas, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, and Pennsylvania. Okay, so if you're a resident of one of those states, Arizona, Arkansas, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, or Pennsylvania, you get the best of both worlds. You can shop around nationwide for the 529 plan with the lowest fees or best investments for you and still get your home state tax break.
That's the deal. It gives residents in those parity states much more freedom in choosing a plan without a tax penalty. For everyone else, it's that trade-off calculation. Is my state's tax benefit worth potentially higher fees or less ideal investment options compared to an out-of-state plan?
Got it. That parity list is definitely something for listeners in those states to know. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Beyond income taxes, we heard 529s have some interesting gift and estate tax benefits. Contributions are treated as gifts. That's right. When you put money into a 529 plan for someone else, like your child or grandchild, it's considered a completed gift from you, the account owner, to the beneficiary for gift tax purposes.
So the normal annual gift tax rules apply.
Yes. That means you can contribute up to the annual gift tax exclusion amount per beneficiary each year without having to file a gift tax return or dip into your lifetime gift tax exemption. For 2025, that annual exclusion is $19,000 per person giving, per person receiving. It was $18,000 in 2024.
Okay, $19,000 a year per kid, per parent or grandparent without tax issues. That's pretty generous. But 529s have that special super funding trick, don't they?
They do, and this is a really powerful feature, especially for people doing more advanced estate planning or those who want to front-load the savings significantly. It's officially called 5-year gift tax averaging.
5-year averaging, what does that let you do?
It allows you to make a single, large lump sum contribution to a 529 plan and elect to treat it as if it were made evenly over a 5-year period for gift tax purposes.
So instead of $19,000 in 1 year, you could put in 5 times that amount all at once.
Exactly. Using the 2025 limit, a single person could contribute up to $95,000, $19K by 5 per beneficiary in one shot. And a married couple, if they combine their exclusions, could contribute up to $190,000, $38K by 5 per beneficiary, all at once.
Wow, $190,000 into a child's 529 in a single year from a couple.
Yes, provided they elect to use the 5-year averaging and make no other reportable gifts to that same beneficiary during that 5-year period.
Why is this so powerful for estate planning?
It's a big deal because it lets you immediately remove a very substantial amount of assets from your taxable estate. If your estate might potentially be subject to federal or estate taxes down the road, moving assets into a 529 via superfunding can significantly reduce that future tax liability.
It gets assets out of the estate. But what's unique about doing it this way compared to just giving the money away?
This is the kicker. Unlike most other types of large gifts where you give away the asset and lose control with a 529 plan, the donor, the person who put the money in and owns the account, retains control over the funds.
So I can put $95,000 into my grandchild's 529, get it out of my estate for tax purposes,
Yeah.
but I still decide how and when that money is invested and when it's withdrawn for their college.
Precisely. You control the account, the investments, the distributions. That combination of removing assets from your estate while maintaining control is a very unique and powerful feature of 529 plans in the estate planning context.
That is a huge point. Control is often key. Okay, so recapping the benefits: tax-deferred growth, tax-free qualified withdrawals, potential state tax breaks, and these powerful gift state tax advantages, including superfunding with retained control. Now let's get practical. What can you actually spend this money on to get those tax-free withdrawals? What counts as a qualified education expense? You said this list has grown.
It definitely has become more flexible over the years thanks to various legislative changes. Let's tick through the main categories based on the sources.
Okay, number one is probably obvious.
Yeah, the big one. Tuition and mandatory fees. This applies to pretty much any eligible post-secondary institution. 4-year colleges, universities, graduate schools, community colleges, vocational schools, technical schools, trade schools, basically any accredited institution that's eligible to participate in the federal student aid programs.
Okay, college tuition and fees. Covered. What else?
Something that was added back in 2017 with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. You can now use 529 funds for tuition at an elementary or secondary school, so K through 12.
Really? So I could use for private grade school or high school tuition?
Yes, you can. But there's an important limit here. You can only use up to $10,000 per beneficiary per year from all 529 accounts for that K-12 tuition.
Ah, okay, so it's capped at $10K a year for pre-college tuition. It's not meant to cover the whole cost of an expensive private school for 12 years, but it can certainly help offset some of it.
Exactly. It's a helpful addition, but with that specific dollar limit.
Got it. What else is on the qualified list?
Books, supplies, and any equipment that's required for enrollment or attendance at the eligible institution.
Does that include computers these days?
Yes, that's now explicitly included. Computers, peripheral equipment like printers, educational software, and even internet access are considered qualified expenses as long as they are primarily used by the beneficiary during the years they are enrolled.
Makes sense. Technology is essential for students now. Okay, what about the other big college cost? Living expenses. Room and board.
Yes, room and board is a qualified expense, which is huge, but there are specific rules you need to follow.
Okay, what are the rules?
First, the student must be enrolled at least half-time for their room and board costs to qualify.
Half-time enrollment, check.
Then, the amount that qualifies depends on whether they live on campus or off campus. If they live in university-owned housing on campus, the qualified amount is simply the actual amount the school charges them for room and board.
Straightforward. What if they live off campus in an apartment?
If they live off campus, the qualified amount is capped. It cannot be more than the allowance for room and board that the college includes in its official cost of attendance figures used for calculating federal financial aid eligibility.
Ah, so you can't just claim, say, $2,000 a month for a luxury apartment if the school's official room and board allowance for off-campus students is only $1,200 a month.
Exactly right. The qualified expense is capped at that school-published allowance. You need to check what that figure is for the specific college.
Does that allowance just cover rent or other living costs too?
Sources indicate that for off-campus living, qualified room and board costs can include things like rent, groceries, and utilities, as long as the total amount you claim doesn't exceed that school's official allowance.
Okay, so keeping receipts for rent, food, utilities would be smart if living off campus, up to that limit.
Very smart, yes. Documentation is always helpful.
Good to know. Are there any other, maybe less common qualified expenses?
Yes, a few others. Expenses for special needs services that are required for a beneficiary with disabilities to enroll or attend are qualified.
Okay.
And another relatively recent addition, thanks to the Secure Act, fees, books, supplies, and equipment needed for participation in a registered apprenticeship program now count.
Oh, that's great. Recognizing apprenticeships as a valid educational path.
It is. It broadens the definition of education the funds can support.
And you mentioned something about student loans earlier. That's a big one, too.
Yes, this was another major change from the Secure Act of 2019. You can now use 529 plan funds to make payments on qualified student loans.
So if there's money left over after graduation, you can use it to pay down student debt.
Yes, up to a certain limit. There's a lifetime limit of $10,000 per 529 beneficiary that can be used for their qualified student loan payments.
$10,000 lifetime limit per person for their own loans.
Correct. And there's a related provision. An additional $10,000 lifetime limit applies to payments made towards the qualified student loans of each of the beneficiary siblings. But those payments for siblings typically have to come from funds rolled over from the siblings' own 529, according to most interpretations. It allows families some flexibility between siblings' accounts for loan repayment.
That $10 loan repayment option is fantastic, though. It really addresses the concern of, what if we save too much? Or what if they get scholarships? It provides a tax-advantaged way to use leftover funds to ease that debt burden.
It absolutely does. It adds another layer of valuable flexibility.
Okay, so the qualified expense list is pretty broad. Tuition and fees, college and K-12 up to $10 loans, required book supplies, equipment, including computers, internet, room and board with rules, special needs services, apprenticeship costs, and even up to $10 in student loan repayment. That's more versatile than many might realize.
Definitely.
Now let's talk about the money inside the plan. What kind of investment choices do people typically have within a 529?
The specific investment lineup will vary from one state's plan to another, but generally the plans offer a menu of professionally managed options. You're not usually picking individual stocks yourself.
Okay. What are the common approaches offered?
Probably the most popular, especially for parents who want a simpler approach, are age-based portfolios.
Age-based. How do they work?
They operate on what's called a glide path. When the beneficiary is young, maybe 0 to 5 years old, the portfolio will be heavily invested in stocks, aiming for higher growth potential over the long term.
Okay, more aggressive early on.
Right. Then, as the child gets older and closer to college age, the portfolio automatically gradually shifts its allocation. It becomes more conservative, reducing the percentage in stocks and increasing the percentage in things like bonds and short-term reserves or cash.
Why does it do that?
The goal is to reduce risk as you get closer to needing the money. You don't want a big stock market drop to wipe out a significant portion of your savings right before tuition bills are due. So it locks in gains and reduces volatility near the target date.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like a built-in risk management system. Sounds like a great option for people who prefer a set-it-and-forget-it approach.
It really is. Very popular for that reason. Within those age-based options, you might even find different tracks, like an aggressive track, moderate, conservative, or maybe options using actively managed funds versus lower-cost index funds, or a blend.
So some customization even within the automated option. What if you don't want it to change automatically? What if you want to pick an allocation and stick with it?
Then you look at the static portfolios, which most plans also offer. With a static portfolio, you choose a specific asset allocation. Maybe it's 70% stocks and 30% bonds, or 50-50, or a very conservative mix. And that allocation stays the same over time, regardless of the beneficiary's age, unless you decide to change it later.
Okay, so that's for someone who's comfortable choosing their own risk level and maybe managing it themselves over time.
Exactly. And then there's usually a third category for even more control: individual fund portfolios. This option essentially lets you build your own custom portfolio from a list of underlying mutual funds or ETFs that the plan offers.
So I could choose, say, 40% in an S&P 500 index fund, 20% in an international stock fund, 30% in a bond fund, and 10% in a money market fund.
Precisely. You pick the specific funds and the percentages yourself from the plan's menu. This gives you the most control over your investment strategy. Some plans might even offer options like FDIC-insured bank deposit accounts as one of the choices.
A bank deposit option inside a 529, like a savings account.
Functionally, it aims for that kind of stability and low risk. But there's a crucial distinction to understand, as we saw highlighted in the sources. While the underlying bank deposits might be eligible for FDIC insurance up to the standard limits, say $250,000 per depositor per bank, the investment units of the 529 portfolio itself, even if it's invested in that bank deposit option, are not guaranteed or insured by the FDIC or any government agency.
Ah, okay. So the investment vehicle isn't insured, even if the stuff inside it is held at an FDIC-insured bank. That sounds a bit tricky.
It is. It means if you use that option, you need to be mindful of your total deposits at that specific bank, both inside the 529 and outside, to make sure you're not exceeding FDIC coverage limits if that insurance is important to you. It's a subtle but important point about those stable value or bank deposit options within 529s.
Good clarification. Definitely something to be aware of if choosing that path. So you've got these choices: automated, age-based, fixed static, or build your own individual funds. Once you've made your choice, how often can you change your mind? How flexible are the investments after you're set up?
This is one of the areas where 529s are less flexible than, say, a regular brokerage account. IRS rules generally limit your ability to change how your existing money is invested within the 529 plan.
How limited?
You are typically allowed to make changes to the investment allocation of the money already in your account only twice per calendar year.
Only twice a year. So I can't react quickly to market swings or constantly tinker with my holdings?
Correct. You can usually change how new contributions are invested anytime you want, but reallocating the existing balance is restricted to those 2 exchanges per year.
Okay, that's a key rule to keep in mind. It encourages a long-term perspective, I guess.
It does. It prevents active trading within the tax advantage structure.
What if I decide I don't like my state's plan anymore? Maybe the fees went up or the performance lagged. Can I move the whole account to a different state's 529 plan?
Yes, you can do that. You're allowed to perform a tax-free and penalty-free rollover of the entire account balance from one state's 529 plan to another state's 529 plan for the same beneficiary.
How often can I do that rollover?
You can do that type of plan-to-plan rollover once every 12 months.
Okay, so investment changes within the plan are limited to twice a year, but you can move the whole thing to a new plan once a year if you want to switch providers.
That's the basic framework. It gives you some flexibility to change plans if needed, but not constant trading ability.
Got it. Now let's talk about control. Who actually owns and controls the money in the 529 account? Does it belong to the child once they turn 18?
No, and this is a really important feature for many parents and grandparents. The account owner, the person who opened the account, usually the parent or grandparent, retains full legal control over the funds.
So the student, the beneficiary, doesn't automatically get access to the cash when they become an adult.
Nope. The beneficiary has no legal rights to the money while it's in the 529 account. The account owner decides when money is withdrawn, how much is withdrawn, and ensures it's used for those qualified education expenses.
That's definitely reassuring for a lot of savers. You don't have to worry about an 18-year-old suddenly having access to potentially tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars with no strings attached.
Exactly. It provides that layer of oversight and ensures the funds are used as intended.
What happens if the original child named on the account, the beneficiary, doesn't end up needing all the money? Maybe they get a fantastic scholarship, or they decide college isn't their path, or they finish early with funds left over. Is that money just stuck? Or do you face those taxes and penalties we talked about?
This is another area where 529s offer fantastic flexibility. You are absolutely not stuck. If the original beneficiary doesn't need or use all the funds, the account owner can change the beneficiary on the account to another qualified family member, completely tax-free and penalty-free.
Change the beneficiary. Who counts as a qualified family member?
The definition is actually quite broad under the tax code. It includes the original beneficiary's spouse, their children and other descendants, their siblings, including step-siblings, their parents and other ancestors, step-parents, nieces and nephews, aunts and uncles, even their in-laws, like son-in-law, daughter-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, first cousins, and the spouses of any of those listed relatives.
Wow, that is a wide net. Siblings, cousins, parents, kids, spouses, in-laws. It sounds like you can almost certainly find another eligible family member to use the funds for education.
It covers a lot of ground. So if your first child gets a full ride, you can easily switch the beneficiary to your second child. Or if you only have one child and they don't use it all, you could potentially change it to a niece or nephew, or even hold on to it and eventually name a grandchild as the beneficiary down the road.
That's incredible flexibility. It really keeps the money working for education within the extended family and avoids that use it or lose it penalty fear.
Precisely. It makes the 529 a much more adaptable long-term savings tool.
Okay, this next topic is a big one, maybe the source of the most anxiety for parents thinking about saving. How does having money in a 529 affect a student's chances of getting financial aid? There's this persistent fear, isn't there, that saving money will just disqualify you from aid?
It's a very common concern and totally understandable given the complexity of financial aid. But the good news is that, generally speaking, 529 plans are actually treated quite favorably in the federal financial aid formulas, certainly much better than some other ways a family might hold assets.
Okay, let's break that down. How does it work specifically with the FSA, the main federal aid application?
For the federal methodology, which calculates your Student Aid Index, or SAI, that's the number that determines eligibility for federal aid like Pell Grants and federal student loans.
Right. The SAI used to be called the EFC.
Exactly. When calculating the SAI, assets held in a 529 plan owned by a parent or owned by the student if they are independent are assessed at a maximum rate of only 5.64% of their value.
Only 5.64%. What does that mean practically?
It means that for every $10,000 saved in a parent-owned 529, the formula might expect the family to contribute at most an extra $564 towards college costs for that year. Compared to how income is treated, or even how assets owned directly by the student are treated, that's a relatively small impact.
Okay, so the asset itself has a fairly minimal impact if it's owned by the parent. What about when you take the money out to pay for college? Do those withdrawals count as income, which can really hammer your aid eligibility the following year?
This is another huge advantage. Qualified withdrawals from a parent-owned 529 plan money taken out and used for those qualified education expenses we listed are not counted as income on the FSA.
Not counted as income at all.
Not for federal aid purposes. That's a major benefit because income typically reduces aid eligibility much more significantly than assets do. So you can use the 529 funds as intended without worrying about it torpedoing your federal aid the next year.
That's fantastic news. What if the 529 account is owned by the student themselves? Maybe set up as a custodial account. Is the treatment different?
Yes, the impact is less favorable in that case. If the 529 account is legally owned by the dependent student, then the assets are assessed at a higher rate. 20% of the value is counted towards the SAI.
20% versus 5.64%. That's a big difference.
It is. The federal formula simply expects students to contribute a larger portion of their own assets toward their education costs compared to what's expected from parental assets.
So clearly having the parent, or grandparent, as we'll get to, own the 529 is generally much better from a federal financial aid perspective.
Definitely preferred for optimizing federal aid eligibility.
Okay, now let's talk about grandparents. This used to be a tricky area for financial aid, didn't it? How grandparent-owned 529s were treated.
It was a real headache. Under the old rules, the assets in a grandparent-owned 529 didn't count on the FAFSA initially. But when the grandparent took money out to pay for the grandchild's college, that distribution was counted as untaxed income to the student on the following year's FS.
And counting it as student income could drastically reduce aid.
Exactly. It could have a very significant negative impact, potentially reducing aid eligibility by up to 50% of the amount distributed. It created this weird situation where well-intentioned grandparents could inadvertently hurt their grandchild's aid package.
Yikes. But that changed recently, right? A
Yep.
really big positive change.
Yes. This is a massive improvement for families, starting with the 2024-2025 FAFSA cycle due to the FAFSA Simplification Act. Under the new rules, 529 accounts owned by grandparents or other non-parent relatives like aunts, uncles, etc.
Yes.
Those assets are no longer reported on the FSAS at all, and crucially, distributions taken from those non-parent-owned 529s to pay for the student's college costs are also not counted as income to the student.
Wait, really? So grandparent-owned 529s and withdrawals from them are now completely ignored by the federal financial aid formula.
That's the new rule for federal aid calculations, yes. It's a huge simplification and a major benefit. Grandparents can now contribute generously to a 529 they own for their grandchild, or even just pay tuition directly from their own 529 without that fear of negatively impacting the grandchild's federal aid eligibility.
That is incredible news. It removes a huge planning obstacle and makes it much simpler for extended family to help out. That's fantastic. Now, is there a small catch, a caveat?
Just the usual reminder. These rules apply specifically to federal financial aid calculated via the FAFSA, determining the SAI. Individual colleges and universities, especially private ones, might use different formulas for awarding their own institutional aid.
The CSS profile or other institutional forms?
Exactly. Some schools might use the CSS profile, which asks for more detailed financial information, and they might still consider grandparent assets or handle distributions differently in their own institutional aid calculations. So while the federal picture is much improved, if you're counting on significant institutional aid from specific, perhaps more selective schools, it's still wise to check their specific financial aid policies or talk to their aid office.
Right. Federal rules are clear now, but institutional aid can always have its own quirks.
Yeah, good point. Okay, we spent a lot of time on the positives and the features. To be balanced, let's make sure we cover the potential downsides or drawbacks of using a 529 plan. What are the main things people should be aware of? The biggest drawback, the main constraint really, flows directly from its purpose. The money must be used for qualified education expenses to get those favorable tax benefits.
And if you don't use it for qualified expenses, if you just decide to take the money out for, say, a new car or a vacation.
If you take a non-qualified withdrawal, the earnings portion of that withdrawal will be subject to ordinary income tax at your regular rate, plus a 10% federal penalty tax on those earnings.
Okay, so let's revisit that example. I put in $10, it grew to $12K. That's $2K in earnings. If I pull out the whole $12K for a non-qualified reason, I get my $10K contribution back without issue. But on the $2K earnings, I pay income tax and a 10% penalty, which is $200.
That's the federal consequence, yes. Your original contributions always come out tax and penalty free since you used after-tax money to begin with. It's only the earnings that get hit with tax and penalty if used improperly. And keep in mind, your state might also try to recapture any state tax deductions or credits you claimed on contributions related to that non-qualified withdrawal.
So potential state tax clawbacks, too. Are there any situations where that 10% federal penalty is waived, even if the withdrawal isn't technically for education?
Yes, the IRS does allow for several penalty exceptions. The 10% penalty, though not the income tax on earnings, is generally waived if the withdrawal is made because the beneficiary has died or become permanently disabled.
Okay, tragic circumstances.
It's also waived up to the amount of any tax-free scholarships the beneficiary receives. So if they get a $5,000 scholarship, you can withdraw $5,000 of earnings penalty-free, though still owe income tax. Other exceptions include receiving veterans educational assistance, certain employer-provided educational aid, or other tax-free educational assistance. And also if the funds are rolled over to an ABLE account for the beneficiary or a qualified family member with a disability.
The scholarship exception is key. So you're not penalized for your child being successful in earning scholarships. You can take out an equivalent amount of earnings without the penalty, just pay the income tax.
Correct. It provides some relief in that common scenario. But the main takeaway is you should go into a 529 fully intending to use the funds for education to maximize the benefits.
Makes sense. What other potential drawbacks did we touch on? The investment changes.
Right. That limitation of only being able to change your existing investments twice per calendar year, that's definitely less flexible than a regular brokerage account where you can trade as often as you like. For some people, that lack of flexibility might feel restrictive.
And fees. You mentioned those can vary a lot.
They absolutely can, and it's a critical factor. Fees within 529 plans, things like administrative fees, underlying mutual fund expense ratios, can differ significantly from plan to plan, state to state.
How much difference can it make?
Even seemingly small differences in fees, say 0.1% or 0.3% per year, can really add up and erode your returns over a long period, like 18 years. We're talking potentially thousands of dollars less for college just due to higher fees. So comparing fees is essential. Generally, direct sold plans where you go directly to the state's plan website and invest yourself tend to have lower overall costs than advisor sold plans, where you work through a financial advisor who might use plans with higher fees or add their own advisory fees on top.
So doing your homework on fees is non-negotiable when picking a plan.
Absolutely critical. Use online comparison tools. Look at the total expense ratios.
And that state tax benefit nuance we discussed earlier, that can also be a drawback in a way, right? If you don't live in a parity state.
Exactly. If your state offers a tax break but only for using its own plan, you might find that your home state's plan has higher fees or investment options you don't like as much as an out-of-state plan. Then you're forced into that trade-off. Take the state tax break with the potentially less optimal plan, or give up the tax break to get lower fees or better investments elsewhere. It complicates the decision if you're not in a parity state.
Okay, so summarizing the potential cons. Need to use funds for qualified education to avoid taxes penalties, with some exceptions. Investment changes limited to twice a year, fees vary widely and require careful comparison, and state tax benefits might lock you into your home state's potentially suboptimal plan unless you have parity.
That captures the main potential downsides, yes.
Given these pros and cons, it makes perfect sense why people would also look at other savings vehicles. Let's explore those alternatives now. What about just using a plain old taxable brokerage account?
Okay, so a standard taxable brokerage account, this is just your regular investment account, not specifically designed for education, meaning it doesn't come with any of those special education-related tax advantages we just discussed for the 529.
No tax breaks for education at all. So why would someone consider it? What's the upside?
The number one overriding advantage is maximum flexibility, complete freedom.
Flexibility in what way?
The money you put into a taxable brokerage account and the growth it achieves can be used for absolutely anything. There are no restrictions. Yes, you can use it for college, but you could also use it for a down payment on a first home, to start a business, buy a car, travel, cover a medical emergency, literally any purpose you choose with no penalties for doing so.
Okay, so if someone is saving for their child's future, but maybe they aren't 100% sure that future includes a traditional 4-year college, or they want the option to use those funds for other major life goals if needed, the brokerage account provides that complete freedom.
Precisely. If that ultimate flexibility is your absolute top priority, a taxable account delivers it. Another couple of pros. You generally have unlimited investment options. You can buy individual stocks, bonds, any mutual fund or ETF that exists, options, crypto if your broker allows, much wider than the curated menu in most 529 plans.
Right, total investment freedom.
And there are no contribution limits like you have with IRAs, or sometimes effectively with 529s based on gift tax rules. You can put as much money in as you want, whatever you want.
Okay, pros. Ultimate flexibility for use, unlimited investment choices, no contribution limits. What are the big trade-offs? The cons compared to a 529?
The major con is the complete lack of those valuable education-specific tax advantages. That's the price you pay for the flexibility.
How does that play out?
Unlike a 529 where growth is tax-deferred, in a taxable brokerage account, your investment earnings, dividends, interest, capital gains distributions from mutual funds are generally taxable in the year they are received.
So you're getting hit with taxes along the way, year after year, which reduces your compounding potential.
Exactly. It creates a tax drag on your growth.
Yeah.
And then when you eventually sell investments to raise cash to pay for college, you'll owe capital gains tax on any appreciation or profits.
So withdrawals for college are definitely not tax-free like with a 529.
Nope. You pay capital gains tax on the growth. And there's no state tax deduction for putting money into a brokerage account, like you might get with your state's 529.
How does using a brokerage account impact financial aid compared to a 529?
From an asset perspective on the FAFS, a parent-owned brokerage account is treated pretty much the same as a parent-owned 529 assessed at that maximum 5.64% rate. So not much difference there.
Okay.
However, the potential issue comes from realizing capital gains when you sell assets to pay the bills. Those realized capital gains count as income on the FAFS in the following year. And as we've said, income generally has a much larger negative impact on aid eligibility than assets do. A tax-free withdrawal from a 529 avoids creating that reportable income.
Right. So selling appreciated stocks in the brokerage account could hurt aid eligibility more than taking a qualified 529 withdrawal.
Potentially, yes. It's something to factor in.
So bottom line on brokerage accounts. Maximum flexibility is the huge plus, but you pay for it with ongoing taxes on growth and capital gains taxes when you use the money for college, plus potentially a bigger hit to financial aid from realized gains. When might this be the right choice, or part of the right choice?
Based on the discussions and sources, it might make sense if that need for flexibility for non-education goals is really paramount for a family. Or, perhaps more commonly, it's used in addition to a 529.
As a supplement.
Yeah. Maybe you prioritize funding the 529 up to a certain level, or you hit contribution limits, and then you use a taxable account for additional savings that you want to keep more flexible. Or maybe you're saving well beyond expected college costs and want some funds accessible for other life goals. We see many families using both tools strategically.
That makes sense. Use the 529 for its tax advantages for the core college goal and the brokerage for overflow or flexibility needs. Okay, let's look at another alternative that often comes up in these discussions.
Yeah.
Roth IRAs. These are retirement accounts, fundamentally, right?
That's correct. A Roth IRA is first and foremost a retirement savings vehicle designed to provide tax-free income in retirement.
So how does a retirement account fit into the college savings picture?
It comes down to a very specific and powerful feature of Roth IRAs related to contributions. You can withdraw your principal contributions, the actual dollars you put into the Roth IRA over the years at any time for any reason, completely tax-free and penalty-free.
Wait, any time, any reason, tax and penalty-free on the contributions?
Correct. The money you contributed is always accessible to you without strings attached. That rule provides unique flexibility.
Okay, so if I've diligently contributed, say, $50,000 to my Roth IRA over 10 years, and my kid has unexpected college costs pop up, I can pull out that $50,000 principal amount to cover it, and there's no tax bill and no 10% early withdrawal penalty.
That's right. Your contributions can always come back out clean. Now, it gets slightly different if you need to tap into the earnings on top of your contributions before you reach age 59 and a half.
Okay, what happens with the earnings? Normally there's tax and penalty, right?
Normally, yes. Early withdrawal of earnings from our Roth typically triggers ordinary income tax and that 10% penalty. However, there's a special exception if you use those early earnings withdrawals for qualified higher education expenses.
An exception for college.
Yes. If you use Roth IRA earnings before 59 and a half to pay for qualified college costs for yourself, your spouse, your kids, or grandkids, the 10% early withdrawal penalty is waived.
The penalty is waived. What about the income tax?
You do still have to pay ordinary income tax on the earnings portion of the withdrawal used for college, but escaping the 10% penalty is significant.
Okay, let me make sure I have this straight. For college, using a Roth IRA before retirement age, contributions come out totally tax-free and penalty-free, earnings come out penalty-free, but you do owe regular income tax on those earnings.
You got it. So compared to a 529 where everything comes out tax-free for college, the Roth isn't quite as good because earnings are taxed. But it's better than a non-qualified 529 withdrawal, no penalty here, and arguably better than selling from a taxable account where you pay capital gains tax, though the ordinary income tax rate might be higher or lower than capital gains rates depending on your bracket. Roth IRAs also generally offer very broad investment options, similar to brokerage accounts.
Okay, that contribution accessibility is a powerful feature. What are the downsides or limitations of relying on a Roth IRA for college savings?
There are several significant ones. First and foremost are the contribution limits. They are much lower than what you can effectively put into a 529. For 2025, the annual limit is $7,000 per person, or $8,000 if you're age 50 or older.
7 or 8,000 a year. That's way less than the $19,000 annual gift exclusion for 529s, let alone the superfunding option.
Much less capacity, especially for higher income earners or those trying to save aggressively. And speaking of higher income earners, Roth IRAs also have income limits that restrict who can contribute directly.
Right, if your income is too high, you might not be allowed to put money into a Roth IRA at all.
Correct. For 2025, the ability to contribute phases out and disappears entirely if your modified adjusted gross income is over $165,000 for single filers or $246,000 for married couples filing jointly. Many families potentially needing to save a lot for college might find themselves above those income limits.
So lower contribution limits and income restrictions are big hurdles. What else?
Well, similar to brokerage accounts, there are no state tax deductions or credits for contributing to a Roth IRA. And probably the biggest strategic drawback, the one everyone needs to really consider,
What's that?
is that any money you take out of your Roth IRA for college is money that is no longer saved for your own retirement.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul, essentially.
Kind of. That account's primary purpose is your financial security in your later years. Using it to fund college costs, even if the tax treatment is okay, directly depletes your retirement nest egg. That could leave you financially vulnerable down the road. It's a major trade-off.
That's a huge consideration. Potentially sacrificing your own future financial well-being. How does using a Roth IRA impact financial aid?
The assets in the Roth IRA itself generally aren't counted on the FAFSA. However, withdrawals from the Roth IRA, even just your contributions, could potentially be counted as income on the FAFSA in the year after the withdrawal occurs.
So taking money out, even your own contributions, might show up as income later and reduce aid.
It's a possibility under current FAFSA rules regarding untaxed income, though the specifics can get complex. Again, income tends to impact aid much more negatively than assets. Also, unlike a 529, you can't have third parties like grandparents just contribute money to your Roth IRA for your kids' college. Contributions generally have to come from your own earned income or your spouse's if filing jointly.
Okay, so summing up the Roth IRA for college. Huge plus is tax-free, penalty-free access to contributions anytime. Penalty on earnings is waived for college, but you still pay income tax on earnings. Downsides: low contribution limits, income limits to contribute, no state tax breaks, potentially counts as income for financial aid when withdrawn, and the big one, it directly depletes your own retirement savings.
That's a good summary. It makes it more of a flexible backup plan rather than a primary college savings vehicle for most people.
So how can 529s and Roth IRAs maybe work together in a strategy?
They can actually be quite complementary. A common strategy is to prioritize funding the 529 plan first, taking advantage of its dedicated tax benefits, potential state breaks, and higher contribution potential specifically for the college goal.
Use a 529 as the main engine.
Exactly. Then the Roth IRA can serve as a valuable secondary or backup fund. You continue contributing to your Roth for retirement, but you know that principal is accessible, tax and penalty-free if absolutely needed for unexpected college costs, or frankly, any other major financial emergency that might come up without having to raid the 529 inappropriately or take out extra loans. It adds a layer of financial flexibility.
Okay, that makes sense. Prioritize the 529, but have the Roth contributions as a safety net. And didn't we mention a new rule that directly connects the two now, a rollover possibility?
Yes. This is another significant enhancement from the Secure 2.0 Act, which started in 2024. It created a new provision allowing for tax-free and penalty-free rollovers from a 529 plan to a Roth IRA owned by the 529 beneficiary.
Rolling money out of the 529 into a Roth IRA. How does that work?
There are several conditions. First, the 529 account must have been open for at least 15 years.
Okay, long-term account.
Second, the money being rolled over must have been in the 529 account for at least the last 5 years. Third, the amount you can roll over in any given year is subject to the annual Roth IRA contribution limit for that year, so $7,000 in 2025 minus any regular Roth contributions the beneficiary already made. And fourth, there's a lifetime maximum rollover limit of $35,000 per beneficiary from all 529s.
Okay, so 15-year-old account, 5-year-old money, subject to annual Roth limits up to $35K lifetime. This sounds like another way to deal with leftover 529 funds after college.
Exactly. It provides a fantastic escape hatch. If there's money remaining in the 529 after all qualified education expenses are paid, instead of taking a non-qualified withdrawal and facing taxes and penalties on the earnings, the beneficiary can gradually roll over up to $35,000 of that money into their own Roth IRA over several years.
And that rollover is tax-free and penalty-free.
Correct. It essentially repurposes leftover college savings into long-term tax-free retirement savings for the beneficiary. It directly addresses that "what if I save too much in the 529 concern" in a very positive way.
That is a game changer. It makes the 529 feel even less risky if plans change down the road. Really boosts its appeal. Are there any other alternatives we should quickly mention before we tie this all together?
Well, one other vehicle sometimes used is a UTMA or UGM account, Uniform Transfers to Minors Act, or Uniform Gifts to Minors Act.
UTMA, UGMAs, how do they work?
These are basically custodial investment accounts set up for a minor. You contribute money, it's invested, but it legally belongs to the child, managed by a custodian, usually the parent, until the child reaches the age of majority.
What's the main drawback there compared to a 529?
The biggest issue for many parents is that loss of control. Once the child reaches the age of majority specified by the state, typically 18 or 21, the money becomes theirs outright, period. They gain full legal control and can do whatever they want with it, buy a sports car, travel the wild, even if the parent's intention was for college.
The control transfers completely to the young adult. That could be risky.
It can be, depending on the child and the amount of money. Also, because the assets legally belong to the child, UTMA accounts have that less favorable impact on federal financial aid compared to parent-owned 529s. They're assessed at the student asset rate of 20% towards the SII.
Okay, so UTMA GMAs, simple to set up, but you lose control at age 18, 21, and they hurt federal aid eligibility more. Good to know the contrast. So after exploring all this 529s, brokerage accounts, Roth IRAs, UTMAs, it seems crystal clear there's no single best answer that fits every single person.
Absolutely not. It's just not that simple. As all the research and expert advice emphasizes, the right approach is deeply personal and depends entirely on your family's specific circumstances, your financial situation, your goals, and even your comfort level with complexity.
So if someone listening is trying to sort through this maze and figure out their own strategy, what are the key questions they should really be asking themselves to guide that decision?
Okay, based on everything we've walked through, here are some of the most critical questions to ponder.
Where do you live? That's crucial for understanding your state's 529 plan options, and importantly, whether you get a state tax deduction or credit, and if your state has that tax parity rule. State tax implications, number one. Second, how much flexibility do you realistically think you'll need? Is this money earmarked strictly for education no matter what? Or do you value having the option to use some or all of it for other major life goals if circumstances change?
Flexibility needs, number two.
Third, how much can you actually afford to save and contribute on a regular basis? This will influence which accounts are even feasible. Roth IRAs have low limits, 529s and brokerage accounts can handle much larger amounts. What's realistic for your budget?
Contribution capacity, number three.
Fourth, how involved do you want to be with the investments? Are you looking for something simple and automated like an age-based portfolio? Or do you want the control to pick specific funds and manage the allocation yourself? What's your investment comfort level?
Investment style, number four.
Fifth, what's the likely impact on financial aid? Consider both federal aid, where parent-grandparent 529s are generally favorable, and potential institutional aid from the specific types of colleges your student might target.
Financial aid impact, number five.
And finally, number six, and this is crucial. What are your other major financial goals, especially your own retirement? Are you already saving adequately for your future? Or would aggressively funding college potentially jeopardize your own long-term financial security? You need to balance these priorities.
Those are excellent guiding questions. Where you live, flexibility needed, how much you can save, investment approach, aid impact, and balancing with retirement. That really helps frame the thinking. And as we touched on with the brokerage account, it doesn't necessarily have to be an either choice, right? A hybrid approach using multiple tools might be the best path for some.
Oh, definitely. A blended strategy can be very effective. We see many families, for example, decide to prioritize funding a 529 plan first, aiming to cover maybe the projected cost of 4 years at their state university, get those core tax benefits locked in for the main goal.
Okay, use the 529 for the base costs.
Right. Then, if they have additional savings capacity, or if they want more flexibility for potential non-college uses or just covering costs beyond tuition room board, They might supplement the 529 but also contributing to a taxable brokerage account. Or they might ensure they're maxing out their Roth IRAs for retirement, knowing that principal provides a backup layer of flexibility if absolutely needed.
That makes a lot of sense. Leverage the specific strengths of each tool. Use the 529 for its targeted education benefits. Then maybe layer on a brokerage for flexibility or a Roth for retirement security plus backup access. It's about tailoring the combination to your overall financial picture.
Exactly. It's about building a strategy that feels right, comfortable, and sustainable for your family's unique situation and your multiple financial goals.
Well, this has certainly been a deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground exploring the landscape of saving for U.S. college costs and the various tools available.
Yeah, we really got into the weeds there. To quickly recap the main points, the 529 plan stands out for its powerful tax advantages. The tax-deferred growth and potentially tax-free qualified withdrawals are huge at the federal level. Plus, you might get a state tax break, too.
Right, and it also generally gets favorable treatment in federal financial aid calculations, especially if owned by a parent or grandparent now. Plus, the owner keeps control, and you have great flexibility to change the beneficiary if needed.
The main trade-offs being you need to use the money for qualified expenses to get the full benefits, investment changes are limited, and you really need to compare plans on fees and understand your state's tax rules.
Then you have the taxable brokerage account. Maximum flexibility in how you use the money, unlimited investment choices, but zero education tax benefits, and you pay taxes on growth along the way and when you sell.
And the Roth IRA, primarily a retirement tool, but offers that fantastic tax-free access to contributions and waives the penalty on earnings used for college. But it comes with low contribution limits, income restrictions, no state tax breaks, and the huge consideration of depleting your retirement funds.
So the core message really seems to be, do your homework.
Absolutely. Start by investigating your own state's 529 plan. See what it offers, what the fees are, what the tax benefits are for you as a resident. But don't stop there.
Compare it to others.
Yes. Use online resources. The College Savings Plans Network, CSPN website, is a great place to start to compare your home state's plan against plans from other states, looking closely at investment options and, critically, the fees and historical performance, though past performance isn't predictive.
That fee comparison seems essential. Don't just default to your state's plan without checking if it's competitive, especially if you live in a state with tax parity.
Exactly. A lower fee in another state's plan might save you more money over 18 years than your state's tax deduction is worth, especially if the deduction is small or capped. You have to run the numbers for your situation.
And of course, if all this feels overwhelming or if your financial situation has some complexity to it,
Then talking with the qualified fee-only financial advisor or a knowledgeable tax professional is probably a very wise investment. They can help you analyze your specific situation, understand the trade-offs, and develop a personalized strategy.
definitely worth considering for personalized advice. But ultimately, while choosing the right account or mix of accounts is important, the single most impactful thing anyone can do.
Is just start saving. And start as early as possible.
Back to that compounding magic.
Exactly, that $80 a month example we used. It wasn't just a hypothetical number. It illustrates the incredible power of time and consistent saving. Every single dollar you manage to save today is potentially one less dollar you or your child will have to borrow down the road, paying interest, or one less dollar you'll have to scramble to find from your future income, or worse, your own retirement savings when the bills come due.
Harnessing that power of time really is key.
Yeah.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought to leave you with, something to maybe mull over. Given how the 529 plan has evolved, especially with these newer features like allowing funds to be used for student loan repayment after college, or this brand new ability to roll over unused funds into the beneficiary's Roth IRA for their retirement, does the 529 plan still feel like it's just a college savings tool anymore?
That's a great question.
Or is it perhaps transforming into something potentially broader, maybe a more flexible, multi-generational financial planning asset, one that can not only cover education costs, but also help bridge that early career debt gap, or even give the beneficiary a significant head start on their own long-term retirement security?
It certainly feels like the potential uses and strategic value are expanding beyond just the tuition years. Those recent changes, especially the Roth rollover, add significant long-term planning dimensions.
It's a really interesting evolution to watch. So think about your own family situation, your long-term goals, and use the information and resources out there to explore what combination of tools makes the most sense for you. Saving for college is undoubtedly a major financial challenge, but with some thoughtful planning, consistency, and leveraging the right tools, it's a challenge you can absolutely make more manageable.